we know we're going to have to continue to do more and more in an uncertain world, and Canada will be there. As to how we will be there, we will work with our neighbours on it, but everything is on the table because we need to make sure that might no longer makes right in this world.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in Kyiv for the third anniversary of the war in Ukraine, saying Canada could offer troops on the ground to the war-torn country as U.S. President Donald Trump negotiates directly with Russia's Vladimir Putin, and the U.S. votes against a UN resolution condemning Russia's invasion. Earlier on this show, however, Foreign Minister Melanie Joly said she still thinks the U.S. will come on board to support a security guarantee for Ukraine.
And I'm here in Europe. I've been here for 2 weeks. I've been to Paris. I've been to Germany and Munich. I've been to Brussels and the EU. And now I'm here in London, making sure we have the same understanding with our allies and making sure also that we can bring the Americans on board.
Something U.S. President Donald Trump essentially dismissed while sitting with French President Emmanuel Macron.
Would a minerals deal include a security guarantee for Ukraine?
Well, it'll be Europe is going to make sure that nothing happens. I don't think it's going to be much of a problem. I think once we settle, there's going to be no more war in Ukraine, and you're not going to have it. It's not going to be a very big problem. That's going to be the least of it.
A lot to talk about with our front bench. Sharon Carr, Shakir Chambers, Carl Bélanger, and Laura Stone are all back. Laura, I'll start with you. Let's start on the prospect of Canadian troops. I understand sort of where the impetus for answering the question from the Prime Minister, but it was kind of interesting to see like no acknowledgement of the fact in 2 weeks he actually won't be making those decisions. And that's a pretty significant decision to make.
Yeah, sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but it is, I mean, it's kind of it's a strong commitment to make for a guy with 1 foot out the door. So I actually think that we're talking about the Liberal leadership debate. I hope that comes up at the debate and you know, in international relations to see what the successor, how the successor feels about this and if they're weighing similar options. You know, Mr. Trudeau obviously views kind of Ukraine and lasting peace as kind of a legacy building piece. I think he clearly feels very strongly about this and hopes to kind of rub off on whoever succeeds him as the leader of the Liberal Party. But whether he can make these kinds of commitments, I mean, it certainly wasn't a firm commitment. It was, he sort of seemed to walk it back a little bit later talking to reporters. So it's difficult to know how seriously to take it. But I think it should be put to the Liberal leadership contenders as to how they would handle this situation with Mr. Trump and kind of the changing geopolitical landscape. Obviously, we'll see what happens in a cabinet shuffle and all of that good stuff. But no, I think it's a difficult one to kind of take at face value and take seriously when the person making the remarks will not be the Prime Minister in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's just a consequential thing to say. And again, I understand the timing of it, Shakir, but that's not a light thing to say.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, we'll see what kind of commitment we do put forth if there is a peace agreement. But, I mean, I think this plays into pretty much what Donald Trump does want to see, right? He wants to see whether it's Canada, whether it's Europe, to step up and kind of, whether it's spend more on NATO, spend more on your military, and kind of take hold of your own security. So if we commit troops, we'll see what any leadership from the Liberal Party says. We'll see what Pierre wins the election, what he says. But I think for Donald Trump, he wants the U.S. out of European affairs. He wants to focus more on the Asia Pacific, and they obviously have interests in the Middle East as well. But I think the European theater and NATO, generally speaking, is not a place where America wants to contribute any more blood and treasure.
Yeah, I don't know, Sharon, how anyone watching the past 10 days could arrive at a different conclusion than the one Shakir just laid out, which is why I was particularly kind of perplexed by Minister Joly's insistence that America can still get on board with any facet of what the allies want to see in Ukraine, whether it be on the guaranteeing security or other fronts. What do you think is behind that approach, trying to sort of be optimistic about something that, you know, has been quite astounding to witness from the Trump side?
Yeah, I would say the challenging part as someone who's worked in this government and understands some of their thinking is that I kind of feel like this entire leadership period should have been treated kind of like a writ period where you can't just go out willy-nilly and announce things that can be consequential and change. Like, everyone understands the need to support Ukraine, but there's a level of pivoting that is needing to be done to adopt this dystopian way that Donald Trump is kind of coming at this from the left field. He's insulted President Zelensky. He's got a very different perspective on this. So I'm not necessarily sure where Minister Joly is coming from on that there's ways to turn him around. I don't think there is. Let's be very clear. I think everyone knows that Donald Trump does what Donald Trump wants. There is no convincing him otherwise, unless there's some sort of harm to the U.S. And some can say there is when it comes to spending to support Ukraine. But I'm going to be interested to see how the candidates respond to this, because they will want to support Ukraine, but also lasting peace and a ceasefire. So I feel like next time there's a leadership, maybe there should be a little less consequential announcements during that period.
Yeah, it was significant. And again, the reason that I mean, when we talk about Donald Trump's position, like, he has aligned himself. The U.S. today aligned themselves with Russia at the UN. He has done so explicitly. He has said, Carl, that Ukraine started this war. He has called Vladimir Zelensky, not Vladimir Putin, a dictator without elections. I don't understand why there's much ambiguity, or why it's advantageous at this point to espouse some sort of level of optimism that things could change.
Yeah, it was interesting listening to Minister Joly, because what she was saying was not far off from what President Macron said coming out of his meeting. So is that the concerted effort from the allies to try to somehow appease Donald Trump and try to get him on board by stroking his ego? Maybe it can work. The big problem is when it comes to what's happening in Ukraine and in Europe in general, everybody's playing risk while Donald Trump's playing Monopoly. So it can't work because you don't know what actually he's after. And, perhaps the considered effort of the allies will work, and that our friends in the United States will prevail. But frankly, let's say I'll be cautiously pessimistic.
Right. Speaking of which, the tariffs are coming next week. So says Donald Trump. Do we have that clip in the control room? Can you guys play what Donald Trump said today? Let's take a listen.
We're on time with the tariffs, and it seems like that's moving along very rapidly. We've been mistreated very badly by many countries, not just Canada and Mexico. We've been taken advantage of. We were led by, in some cases, fools.
I've interviewed Kirsten Hillman, our ambassador, Laura, recently, and then Minister Joly, whose comments we'll play in a few moments. Both of them have arrived at the same conclusion. You can lobby all you want, but ultimately Donald Trump is going to make this decision, and only he is going to make that decision. How concerned are you about next week?
Me personally? Sorry, I thought you were playing.
Well, like, on behalf of Canadians, how concerned are Canadians?
Concerned on behalf of Canadians. Look, I think we have to take it at face value. We've heard that from everyone who's dealt with Donald Trump, right? I mean, first of all, you have to wait and see what happens, but you also have to prepare for the worst and take it at face value. I think kind of this pressure campaign that we're seeing from Canadian politicians to kind of fan out and try to speak with U.S. lawmakers, U.S. lobby groups, businesses, is probably the right approach. And we're seeing kind of a cross-partisan effort in order to do so. But we've also heard from those who've done business with Donald Trump or understand how he approaches situations that really the only thing that's going to change his mind is pain, economic pain from within. And so Canada might have to feel that, and other countries might have to feel that before any minds are changed. So I think, I don't think anyone's kind of going to sleep at night hoping that he doesn't do this. I think that everyone is sort of preparing for the fact that this will happen, but it's only under, the circumstance of economic pain for himself, for his own industries, pressure from his own supporters that is going to eventually change his mind.
Some might call it cautious pessimism. Carl,
I think so.
Thanks to our front bench. I appreciate it. Sharon Carr, Shakir Chambers, Laura Stone, and Carl Belanger.